Today, I'm going to be sharing with you the secrets I used during my F1 sim racing career to extrapolate more pace, performance and consistency, going over different driving techniques that extrapolated more performance from the car, myself, and minimized distance around the track. With that being said, let's get into the heart of the video and straight into the action. We're on Spain, Catalonia. The reason being is I believe it's one of the best tracks in the F1 game to be learning new driver skill sets, developing your talent and harnessing your ability. The reason for that is it's got a fantastic mix of low speed, medium speed and high speed corners as well, with very different corner types. Some corners are very short and quick to go in and out of, and some corners are quite long and you spend a lot of time actually turning in the apex. So this video is going to be broken down into 3 segments and using the techniques that I used at the peak of my F1 sim racing career to basically get faster. With that being said though, we're going to get into the first part of the video, what's going to be reducing the lag between using the brake pedal and the throttle. What is the lag between the brake pedal and the throttle? It's quite simply the time that it takes you or takes me to go off the brake pedal and get back to the throttle. We're going to show you an example on this next corner. You can see that we have the telemetry in the center of the screen, what's showing my exact braking and throttle input. In this corner, we had about a 2-second lag between coming off the brake pedal and getting back to the throttle. The reason that this is bad is quite simply I'm doing nothing with the car in this time, so it's about 2 seconds of lost opportunity for the car to be having a better performance threshold. Racing is basically all about generating your own grip and generating your own performance. How far can you push the car? And the less that you have a lag between the brake pedal and the throttle, the more that the car is doing something in the sense of either decelerating or accelerating, and that can help you to be reducing your lap times, increasing performance and getting more out of the car. As you can see though, with the HUD, it is showing my exact braking and throttle inputs live, so you can correlate with what I'm saying with what you're seeing on the screen. So, let's break it down from the start. You're going to go into the corner and you're going to start trail braking. Trail braking is when you peak the brake pressure and then reduce gradually from that point onwards to get to 0% once you reach your clipping point of the apex. The clipping point of the apex is your ideal racing line when you reach the curbstone. For example, on the right hander here, you can see we have a clipping point and then after that we're just going around the corner. The same as here, we have a clipping point of the apex. It is basically just the racing line. At what point do you come off the brake pedal is when you get to the curbstone on the inside. So you're going to hit the brake pressure and then reduce gradually to 0% as you reach the clipping point, as we show the example here. We reach our clipping point and then go back to 0% braking pressure and then get back to the power there on after, you know. So this is really critical because you're basically now going to reduce the brake pressure to 0 as you get to the curbstone and then building up the power of the throttle after. And this is something that you can use to exploit and gain lap time potential, as you're just meaning that the car is doing more over the whole lap, and then because the car is doing more in the sense of either decelerating or accelerating, you're moving the weight transfer around the car and you're just being more aggressive, proactive, and just doing more work with the car. And the car likes that. The car likes to have the work done to it, and the car doesn't like when you have a situation that you're doing nothing, i.e. if I'm just rolling through the corner with no brake, no throttle on, the weight transfer is stuck in the center of the car and I can't be putting the weight transfer to the front or the rear to be giving me more grip where I want the grip and performance to be. If the car is just basically sat rolling and I don't have the brake or the throttle applied, there's only going to be just a slight amount of weight transfer to the front, just because we're decelerating effectively, and that's putting the smallest amount of weight transfer to the front. The reason weight transfer is so important is because when you have the weight transfer to the front, it's generating weight, and that weight is generating friction, and that friction is generating grip on the front axle, and the same is true for the rear. When you're accelerating, the weight transfer is putting the grip to the rear axle, and that is what's giving you the ability to generate friction and then generate grip from that point onwards. So That's what this technique is based about. Putting the weight transfer on the front axle going into the corner, and as soon as you've got the rotation that you need in the apex and from the car, you can start going back to the power and accelerating out and putting the weight transfer to the rear axle of your vehicle, and that will be leading to better lap times, better performance, and a more one-to-one feeling with the car, and hopefully giving you a confidence to push on and an enjoyment as well. This technique is so enjoyable when you're doing it right, because you can start to feel the car, what's happening with it, and you're really so much more in control, and you're not at the mercy of the car having random handling characteristics, because you know exactly what it's doing and it's reacting to how you want it to be done. This is true in 95% of the corners on the F1 calendar. There is 5%, maybe even less to be honest, corners that you do require a little bit of throttle lag on, just simply because the corner is so long that you do have a situation that you can't just hold the brake pressure forever, and in the changeable conditions as well, it can be a little bit difficult. So in corners that are very, very, very long, i.e. the final sector in here, Spain, Catalonia, you do sometimes require to be doing nothing on the pedal for about half a second maximum. And that's just me being very open, honest, and transparent with you, because I want to give the best information that I can. That there is sometimes a 5% scenario, like I say, maybe even less, that you want to be doing nothing on the pedal for half a second, just simply because the corners are so long. As I'm going to show you right now, we go into the clicking point, and because the corner is so long and we're turning for such an extraordinary amount of time, that there is a situation that doing nothing on the pedal can be an advantage, because then we're not overslowing the car and we're not putting weight transfer or trying to accelerate the car too soon. As you can see, we go into the apex and we have about half a second maximum of just doing nothing on the pedal, because you can see we're turning for so long in this apex that there is just a very low chance that we can be either on the brake pedal or the throttle. As you can see, again, this is another situation that you can't just always be on the brake or the throttle, because the corner is so long that it becomes really difficult to do so. With that being said though, key point summary for the first point in this video of reducing the brake lag. You really want to focus on trail braking into the clipping point of the apex, getting to 0% on the brake pressure, and as soon as you're to 0%, then start building up the power of the throttle, and that will be the optimal way to go into the corner and out of the corner as well, exploiting the car performance, lowering lap time, and hopefully giving you a more one-to-one feeling with the car and being in more control of everything. As I say though, there is a 5% situation that you do sometimes just need a bit of lag between the brake pedal and the throttle, and don't be afraid to do that if you do need to do it, especially if it helps you build a little bit of confidence in tricky conditions, tricky corners, and in scenarios that you're just not 100% sure for. Section 2 of this video is going to be about adapting to understeer or oversteer, and how you can be changing your racing line to be adapting to car handling characteristics that you don't feel comfortable with. To be honest, we all love a car that's confidence inspiring, that gives us the grip and the balance that we love and we dream for, but that's easy to go fast with. That's so easy, but it's unrealistic that that will be the car balance you get for the whole lap or the whole race or the track in general to go fast with. Sometimes you need to make a compromise on your setup. Sometimes the car balance can be perfect for 80% of the track, but for 20% of the track it's going to be not optimal, and you're going to have understeer or oversteer in corners that you don't want it to be on. So I'm going to teach you how to adapt to that, and how to change your own driving style to suit those individual situations and maximize car performance without feeling like you have to compromise the rest of the car setup and performance operating window for one specific corner on the track. Starting off with understeer, and what's really important with understeer is actually to brake early, and we're going to go into the replay mode of the game because it's such a good corner to be showing this example as well. Turn 4 is another fantastic corner, we'll get to that later in the example. So the thing what's really important when you're having understeer in the car is to brake actually a bit conservatively, brake a little bit early, because the racing line is king. When you have understeer in the car, your absolute priority is to maintain a strong and consistent and optimal racing line. If you vary away from that optimal racing line and pick up mid-corner understeer that pushes you wide from that optimal racing line, it will be disastrous for your lap time, because you'll travel extra distance and it will limit your ability to get back on the power. So if you have a car that's understeering, pretty much always be conservative on the brake. Focus to getting to the apex and traveling a shortest distance around the corner possible. As you can see in this situation, we generated some understeer in the car, and what I'm really focusing on doing is keeping the car on a short racing line so then I can get the steering wheel open sooner and getting back to the power sooner. In an optimal racing line, we'll be all the way much closer to the outside of the track much earlier, so we can carry and push more speed through. But adjusting my racing line for the understeer, I'm traveling a shorter distance on purpose, so then I can just get back to power sooner and minimize the downsides of the negative handling characteristic happening in this situation, i.e. the understeer. And how we can start to build upon that and show you the negatives of the situation. If we end up over pushing the entry and having understeer, you're going to see how much it pushes us wide in the middle of the corner and how much it limits us ability to get back on the power. And you can see it's really fighting the car. Yes, I touched the red paint on the outside of the track that has slightly less grip than the normal tarmac, but you can see by generating that understeer in the middle of the corner, it pushes us wide away from the racing line. And now we're spending from this point all the way until this point to even just be fighting to get back to the power, just spending that much time away from the optimal line. Having the inability to get back to the power in an optimal way will be so costly for lap time potential, and that is why when you're having a car that's understeering, you really want to focus to braking conservatively, getting to a really short line around the apex and just traveling the shortest distance around the apex possible to minimize the downsides of having that understeer within your vehicle. If you can travel that short distance, brake conservatively, you will basically lose little to no time from having understeer within the car, and then you can even work it to your advantage of having good traction on the exit of the corner. Because of course, if you're understeering, you're not oversteering, and that can help you bring a more traction into the exit of the corner. So there are upsides of having slight understeer in the car, and I actually drive quite a lot with understeer, and I much prefer the feeling of having understeer in the car rather than having oversteer. So that's just part of my driving style, but it's something that I use anyway on a day-to-day, lap-to-lap, race-to-race basis of braking that little bit more conservatively, traveling a short distance around the corner, and then how I can maximize the traction on the exit of the radius that we're traveling around the track. And that is how I generate a lot of lap time myself anyway. On the flip side, we're going to now talk about the oversteer of the car. And a lot of oversteer in the car is generated from doing combined load on the entry to the corner. What is combined load? Combined load is when you're turning and braking at the same time, or on the other situation, accelerating and turning at the same time. As you can see, as we're sort of going down the straight, the weight transfer of the car is always going to the opposite side than we're turning. So if we turn to the right, the weight transfer goes to the left. And the reason that this is important to know is as we're sort of putting weight to different sides of the car, if you look when we're turning to the right hand side, the rear left is being pushed down and generating a lot of friction in the track. But the rear right is actually being lifted up relative to the rear left, what means it has less friction and less compression into the track. And of course, that compression is what generates a lot of the friction. So as you start to turn into a corner, and you're going to have a situation that rear right is generating much less friction than the rear left when you're turning to the right-handers, and of course it will be inverted when you're turning to the left. This is what can generate quite a lot of oversteer as you're actually turning into the corner, as you're going to have an uneven grip platform on the rear axle. As you can see, turning in, that rear left of the car is really having much more ability to grip and give confidence than the rear right, and that basically imbalance between the grip platform is what can be generating a lot of the oversteer and kick oversteer as you go into the apex. So now, how can you counteract that, and how can you adapt your own driving ability and your own racing line to maximize your potential with that? And that's simply braking a straight line for longer. And we're only talking about like 5 to 10 meters, but then braking in a straight line for longer, what that is going to be doing to the car is simply reducing the time that you have the combined load on for. So you can see by turning in later for the corner, I got the car slower, I got the car more predictable, and then once I traveled that 5 or 10 meters extra in a straight line, I was able then to start turning in, and because the car was slower, there's less basically downforce to be pushing in even level of grip over the rear axle, and the car is more stable because of that. And then I'm able to turn in, take a much more sharp line for the apex, and then get back to the power. I still had a little wiggle on the exit, but to be honest, it was just my mistake being a bit ambitious back on the power. But now compare that to the line that we took when we had the understeer. When we had the understeer in the car, we were already turning in well before this. We was actually turning in right now, basically, with the understeer, and we was really all over that inside curbstone. But whereas when we have the oversteer, you can see we're taking a much wider line and focusing on getting the car straighter earlier for the exit, and we're basically ignoring the shorter line around the corner. So think about that at home when you're driving yourself as well. When you have a situation that you have understeer in the car, you really want to focus on traveling less distance around the corner. But when you have oversteer in the car, you really want to focus on basically elongating the braking zone, making it a bit longer by 5 to 10 meters, turning in a little bit later when the car is more settled, and doing less combined load in the braking zone. And then you can turn in confidently, get the car straight as possible, and then you can start accelerating out. Now we're going to show you an exact comparison between the oversteer driving line and also the understeer. Starting with understeer, we go in nice and early, get the car slowed down, and getting back to power in a very conservative way. You can see we actually had a bit of understeer going into the apex, so it was quite a nice example. We turn in, and you can see we did actually have to fight the front axle of the car quite a bit to actually get into the apex, but we was able to get there in the end, keep the racing line in a good controlled fashion, and then we could start building up the power in a really nice way for the exit of the corner. So take a mental note of that, and you can see that we have got a situation that the car is going for the line very nicely. And now on the oversteer example, you're going to see how much later we start to turn in, how longer we keep the braking zone straighter for, and now you can see we just focus on getting the car straight, and now back to the power in this situation. So now you can see the exact comparison of the two lines, and although with the understeer we was already connecting with the apex at this point in time, we're much wider right now, and we're focusing on just setting up a really good exit. So although we traveled a few extra meters right now to focus on stabilizing the rear of the car, we're able to gain that back by simply making sure the rear of the car is more predictable, more stable for the mid-corner phase, and then we can start accelerating out of the apex very nicely. The final part of this video is going to be about minimizing the distance around the track. Of course, we mostly all know, to be honest, how to do it in the obvious places. When we have a situation that, like, between Cobb's Corner and Mags and Beckett's on Silverstone, we very rarely go all the way to the right hand side of the track because it's just distance that we don't need to travel, and more often than not we keep the car to the middle of the road to save a few extra meters of not having to travel that, basically. Now we're coming up to a section of the track that is very unique for this, and is a fantastic example here on Spain. Of course we have turn 5, the hairpin right now, but the little kink on the straight, what I don't really consider a corner, is technically turn 6. A lot of people take a racing line like this, for example, and then start braking for the corner and then accelerate out of it, of course trying not to spin. But this is a unique advantage that a lot of people don't really think about or see, even, that they're coming out of the corner and then they're traveling a longer distance for no reason. Now, if we compare that to taking a shorter distance down the straight, we're not compromised for the braking zone, and we're able to have an equally as good corner, but we traveled a few meters less down this previous straight, what is allowing us to just travel less meters around the track. And to be honest, it's only going to save you a few thousandths of a second, but I know I want a few thousandths of a second. It can make the difference between the pole position, a new PB in qualifying, over a race distance like 30, 33 laps. To be honest, it's probably only going to save you like 2 to 3 tenths. But that 2 to 3 tenths is worth having, and every advantage is worth doing, in my opinion. Comparing to before, we're about, you know, like 2 to 3 car widths, I should say, over to the left-hand side. Realistically, I would say about 2 car widths to the left-hand side of the previous racing line. Well, again, is going to correlate to like maybe traveling 2 meters less over the track distance, maybe 4. So it's not much. And when you're traveling, what are we traveling at? We're traveling at 151 miles an hour. 4 meters is basically nothing. But again, the advantage is worth having, and it's something I've always done during my career, to be having those little differences and those little advantages to be maximizing performance. Because if you add those little fractional details up, you're going to be in a position that you can just gain advantage for free, and who doesn't like gaining advantage for free? So this video is going to be summarized now. I did the lag between the brake and the throttle, and that's something you really want to focus on. Trail braking into the apex, reducing the time between using the brake and the throttle, and then you can be absolutely sweet and feeling more one-to-one connected with your car and improving your performance. The second example is the racing lines that I've always used to tackle a car that has understeer or tackle a car that has oversteer. The third example is just minimizing distances around the track, and where you can spot a unique advantage. There we go, finally got my words out. You can do that and then just be taking that for yourself, because at the end of the day, most of the time it's a competition, and if you can take a unique advantage, you might as well do so. So with that being said, hopefully this video has been helpful, informative. Hopefully you like the HUD on the screen as well. It's something that I'm looking to implement as well for F125, so you can just see more data, more stuff on my own driving as well. And yeah, hopefully the video qualities are improving. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the journey on YouTube so far. And yeah, to the outro. Now with the outro to the video, and yeah, hopefully the video was helpful, informative for you. And yeah, I'm really enjoying the journey that I'm doing on YouTube, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the year brings. Apologies for a few days off. To be honest, I lost my voice, was a little bit sick in these days. And to top it off, I had a lot of PC issues. I actually wanted to record this video and get it out 2 days ago, but quite simply, my PC decided not to work. So I think the issues are fixed now. I think I should be able to do live streaming and full-time content creation again. Touch wood. I basically reset everything on the PC. So yeah, could be lovely jubbly. But with that being said, hopefully I will see you in the next video. Grazie, ciao ciao. Bye bye.